Hi guys, today I have a real good treat for all of us, a visual treat. In 1989, I had the chance to have a poster in a graphics poster for the first time. And not only it was a poster, but it was in a full page. It was presented in a full page. And this was for me a big, big deal. And in this book, there was another poster that looked like that. And it was from someone called Skolos-Wedell. And I didn't know who it was. And later on, I got to meet this Skolos-Wedell. And later on, they made different books. And I want to share with you also a very strange book that I came along to. And but you know what? The first poster, I want to show you something. I actually have it here in real. So look at that. Quite amazing, huh? You see how it's made? Well, I don't know how it's made, and that's exactly what I want to figure out. So we're going to hang it here. And we're going to ask this Skolos-Wedell, what is it about? So Nancy Skolos, Tom Wedell, thank you for being here with me in my little place here. Do you know that many people thought that you are one person, right? Before we finally met in person, I pictured you as a sort of a Greek woman with black hair, middle age, very elegant, and who had made it in America. Skolos-Wedell, this double name has almost become a brand. And it's the mark of recognition for your studio, and it's not really separable from your style. When we talk about Skolos-Wedell, everyone in our field visualize this intricate, unique photographic style, and this is your expression. Both of you have met first while studying at the famous Cranbrook Academy of Art. Tom, you were, I think, coming from your undergraduate studies in fine art photography at the University of Michigan. Nancy, you were in industrial design at the University of Cincinnati. And after Cranbrook, you went to graduate to Yale. So you are living together in Providence, Rhode Island, where you do work, and you also teach at the renowned RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. There, Nancy, you have been department head in graphic design, as well as dean of architecture and design from 2014 to 2017. You have given countless lectures, exhibition, workshop around the world. I even remember having you one time in Basel. You are a member of the Alliance Graphique Internationale, and in 2017, you were awarded in the US with the AIGA medal for, I'm reading, pushing the boundaries of art, design, and technology with a distinctive vision to find connection among disparate forms. So let's simplify. Two individuals, I think two formative schools, if we say Cranbrook and Yale, two education style maybe, that met into a multidisciplinary visual dialogue. 2D meets 3D. So Nancy and Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
My first question, why can't you ever design something straight? And I'm holding this beautiful book that I didn't know when we met, and then it's an amazing book about guitar from Farrington guitar, and then if you open it, you know, there's no end. It's like a sort of another 3D image, and in there is even a CD, and in this CD you have you can listen to the different guitar belonging to different famous musicians. So I wanted to start with this, if you're okay, and then share my screen, and then if you could lead us to this story, how you're working. So
one thing really important about that book was that it was so inspired by the guitar maker himself. He was just the most magical, energetic person, and his guitars were so beautiful. And the reason the book's sort of odd shaped is his guitars were famous for being asymmetric, and we wanted the book to kind of have the same presence in a weird way, like that kind of threw you off when you saw it, that you had when you saw his acoustic guitars, which were largely based on more electric shapes. But there was a sonic reason why he thought that the asymmetry worked for acoustic. And you can also see on the cover how he would often divide the guitar into two different types of wood just to get a slightly subtle sound difference from the upper and lower parts of the instrument.
Yeah.
So we were so excited about the shapes. And when we went to make the cover, we usually had to make our own model parts, have a fabricator do it, but we drew up the parts, and he made about 10 of each in all different kinds of material and wood, and it was just like, it was like heaven working with his forms.
So how did you communicate with him? Was he there with you in the studio, or?
Occasionally he was in the studio. He was in Los Angeles, so we of course we were in Boston, and he would come. He came several times during critical moments, but mostly we did it by telephone, and he would call and we would tell him what we were doing, and he'd just say fine, and that's how we conducted our business. And if we needed something, like in the case of the cover, he would make all the parts, ship it to us, and it would be up to our discretion as to how we use the parts. So it became a kind of interesting relationship, because even on occasion he would sing songs of the performer over the phone to get us inspired as to what the music, the nature of the music was. And then we would find recordings and things, but there were certain kinds of attitudes he was after with each musician, that when he made the guitars, and he was trying to give us that sense of what the attitude was.
Yeah, and we see here, this is amazing, because you're showing your how you're working, and how actually you are putting those 3D elements into something more 2D, and we can see here this fantastic build-up in your studio, and then the final product here, which is the cover.
This is the photograph, yeah. Which you never do first, but we did it first. Before any other thing, we tested it doing the cover to see if our idea about a kind of collage of images would work. And it did and it didn't. It was very successful for the cover because we had all of these parts. Then we realized we had about 50 of these guitars and spreads to make, and that the task of producing something, this is pre-computer in a way. There are computers, but but not the kind that could do what we didn't think, the kind that we wanted to do. And so in a very panicked situation, we called one of our big separator people, and they said they could do it. It would be $600 an hour and probably take a month. And so there was no budget for that. So we said, okay, but we had seen a machine at Eastman Kodak. And Eastman Kodak became a very principal player in this because they had what was then 1991, 1991, a very sophisticated piece of equipment that would process and be able to assemble large files, I mean, big files, what we'd consider today big files, like 800 megs kind of size files, and assemble those into collages. And we thought that was fascinating. We called them in hopes that maybe they'd let us do something with somebody there at Kodak. And they said, no, we have to do it ourselves. They would train us. They would bring us up to Maine, Camden, Maine, and we were able to use the machine whenever we needed. And we did for 14 or 15 weeks. Weekends, we'd go up Thursday and stay the weekend and produce these things. And they were excited to have it because they said, well, we need a sample of what this machine can do, and this looks like our kind of project. So they were very instrumental in that to get the rest.
That now we would do maybe with almost with Photoshop, right?
Photoshop,
yeah,
easily with
definitely.
Photoshop, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But then, not so much. But they did also give us all the film, which was an interesting donation.
Yeah.
So these guitars were so beautiful. The layouts just designed themselves because the symmetry and the way things would just sort of always look good together. It was really a fun project.
Yeah, I see also those pages have this almost cubist feeling, and you can see here also how you are, because of course you're making the spreads, but you're also making the order. So you decided, or is it chronologically, or is it by shape or sounds, or how is the connection? You remember how the rhythm of the book?
Well, what happened was it was kind of catch as catch can with the photography. Whenever he could extract the guitars from the rock stars, you know, we would get a little shipment of, you know, Elvis Costello's or Tom Petty. We met him when he was doing a concert near here and picked up his guitars at the Four Seasons, where he was staying under an assumed name. So it was just, you know, we'd done this photograph kind of represents where we were in the process when we realized we hadn't even thought about the order because we'd just been doing them as they came in. So we started laying them out and trying to figure out a flow. But content-wise, there wasn't really any, you know, they were all just sort of a snapshot of a musician's group of guitars. Danny's one thing was he said, I want it to look like there's a hit on every page. Like he didn't want it, the pacing was sort of just like in your face, every single spread pretty much.
Yeah, there is this page that I want to show where you're basically showing the construction of this guitar, which you told me it's actually a bass, but this is so amazing because one of the page have the pieces, right? The raw pieces, the material, and then you go to the next, and where you can see the shapes taking form, and
we did that at his place.
No, we did that at our place. That was at our studio.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. But we watched him make it.
Yeah, we watched him make it
in real time. Some of those pictures were from his studio.
Yeah.
And we had to have him change his shirt every day so that you could tell the time was passing.
Yeah. Well, we did the making, the parts.
The little insets.
Yeah, the insets where that was done in LA at his studio. And then in our studio we did, but he came out for this because I said, you know, Danny, it's so complicated. I don't want to don't want to mispresent what you're doing. So he came out and we'd make the arrangements under the camera, lock the camera down and make them underneath and just go.
No, it's unbelievable. Look at that. It's like really a beautiful composition. And then you bring us into the final piece. And again, with the little insert of what he's doing and all the finish, I think is well known for putting, engraving or no, I don't know, integrating things together. And in the book, there are those, every page is a little story about the guitar. And then the one we were showing was this one, right? I think it's the one from the Don Was. And he says, it talks, right? So this is the voice of Danny Farrington. And then he says, I really admired the work Don did with his band, but I didn't get to know him until we were introduced in a BMI award dinner. Then Don and I started talking. He mentioned that he wanted to get one of my basses, and he tells nobody had ever suggested using wooden frets before. So it was definitely I was definitely willing to give it a try. So it's full of little stories, for guitar lover. And so this book is amazing. And, I found it online. It's still available. There are like used copies everywhere. So I wanna share again the screen and go back to where we were, and I wanted to share with you this, which is the work from Pablo Picasso. While watching your book, I went online. I found that Picasso, I didn't know that that Picasso was building those kind of a cardboard model with representing guitars, and when you look at them, you don't even really know where you are. What is flat and what is 3D? So this is Cubism a source of your inspiration? Where did it come from? I mean, you think it's from Cranbrook or?
No. You want to?
No, I think it's we've always loved Cubism, and Picasso, of course, and Braque and the Cubists were very strong influence even early on. I mean, you sit in our history class and sometimes you might fall asleep, or you think you have, but you've actually absorbed quite a bit of information. So it became an interest to look for something about time, because I was a photographer and am a photographer, and this idea that time is built into the photographic image, and this idea that perhaps, like the Cubists and like an animator even, having multiple frames operate within the context of a single two-dimensional plane is an interesting idea. And so one of the things we were trying for in the book was that the spread should almost look like a single frame from a continuous film or animation. And so this Picasso, of course, he did that, in his work. And I think that's part of it.
Yeah, and here we are. I went to the next picture, which is exactly what you're talking about the plans, the space, and so on. This is a poster you did for
Lyceum.
Yeah, so you have a lot of poster for Lyceum. What is Lyceum?
It's one of our architecture clients, John McKee, started this foundation to provide fellowships for students in architecture to travel, because he gained so much knowledge in his education from traveling. And so every year he and he's no longer with us. He passed away several years ago, but his foundation continues, and they get a really high profile architect to write a program each year, and they have a competition and choose the winners. So this particular year, the program for the students was to design a marketplace for Mexico City.
Yeah,
so
we see that we're so lucky because you're so generous to share your sketches and your start. And many of students that I met have the feeling they have to have the idea before. and that's it. And by looking at this, we discover that you are in a sort of a explorative moment, right?
Yes.
Right. Like we didn't even think of the shopping bag until it sort of appeared in the collage.
Yeah, we see that there is here a shopping bag,
Yeah.
a kind of handle, and then
Right. Yeah.
and
That
then
became
there's
more formalized. The broken shopping bag was an effort to create, or you could even call it a folded shopping bag, but the idea that it's containing those letter forms and that everything is sort of either affecting the bag in some way, either breaking out of it or reconfiguring the exterior, was that reason for breaking up that space, because it's like a time motion study and these things are moving across. The architect saw this and immediately thought it should be a house. And I said, well, yes, you could definitely make a house if you look down on it. It has a bit of a fascination for a landscape, I suppose. But this is made of paper, folded. This is a woven paper with some texture to it, because you're trying to get that sense of a market that's has some grit to it, and that's the idea there.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to see also them naked and looking like, as you say, maybe at the roof of a house or so, of a building. And then finally the mix where we don't know anymore what is 3D, what is 2D. The typography is integrated in a way which is very special. There are different levels of information, hierarchy, very, very small elements, as well as the big ones. How you think people enter your pictures?
I think the collage process, like you were saying, that you don't really know what's going to happen ahead of time. You don't even have the idea, but it all just sort of stirs itself up, and each piece sort of ends up with its own entry points, like its own hierarchy. And these posters always have so much copy on them, the jury, the panel, the prizes, it's really a challenge to get it all on there.
Yeah.
But the large format helps. So these are all 90 by 128. So they're good scale, which helps. And then, finding kind of visual ways in. We don't mind multiple ways in, as long as there's a kind of way to address it at different levels, at different distances. Then we're looking for that as we make it. So we always do a process where we're making it in the camera, we're making it in the drawings, we're making it on the screen, and then we're actually printing out rough copies and making full size. So we see what happens when details can be omitted or details should be added.
No, that's the luxury of a large posters.
Yeah.
And I want to. I think you have do you have a model?
Yeah, I have a model. This one is not for that, but this is for a more recent one. This is a cut of paper, and you begin to see, the fascination here with why the architects are all going, oh boy, a building. You can begin to see there's some credibility to the way it's addressed. And then this one is one of our smallest models. This is a more recent situation, just cut from paper, very simply. This came from a box. We got a box, and I can't remember, it was perfume or not perfume, but something came, and it was a box that unfolded rather beautifully. And I thought, and it didn't have the cutouts, and it didn't have all of the shapes, but it had some of these facets. And I thought, when we were talking about this poster, this idea of unfolding, and each one is a different frame, then we get that. So that became part of so the collage was more a box, folding box, than it was a collage, but it became a kind of a tool to get to the next level, which was then the poster.
Yeah, here it is. It's beautiful, and you even found a way. it's kind of it's really mysterious, because you were showing something on a rigid surface, and now things are still moving organically. So I can tell you have other tricks here. It's really
well, this was done by printing, of course, doing it photography of the model as you saw it, and then type and working on that in its scale. And then an accident occurred because I had been experimenting with cloth printing at school for my poster class, and I thought, well, and by accident I had thrown a different poster, but I threw it down on a table, and it wrinkled up so nicely. And we were working on this, and I thought, ooh. And so Nancy saw the wrinkled photo. I took a quick snap, and she saw it and said, that's what we should do with this. And I said, you're right, because the rigidity of it is just so stiff and kind of brutal in a way. And we should really call attention to this idea of reframing, not only as multiple sort of aspect ratio framing, but the whole idea, all the concepts are going to be more organically addressed. And then so the folded became very much the way to work. So printed, rephotographed, and then printed from that.
On a cloth that you are, yeah, it's so special. Yeah, you keep showing transmitting. This is a poster for public bikes in San Francisco, and then I think you were invited with 30 other designers to make each of your poster, and then there again there is this very mysterious stack of randomly cut piece of magazines and newspaper. Can you explain what this is?
Well, we've always been much more inspired by sort of scraps of things at the edges of our work table than what we're actually intending to do. And you know, it started out with just colored paper, and then we graduated to cutting up some of our really expensive old architecture magazines. And once we started cutting up images in type, it gave us so many more possibilities for how different things could interplay in terms of meaning, in terms of hierarchy. And we use it a lot in our teaching with the students, just to try to get them to bring form and content up to the same level at the same time. So when we're making these, we usually watch a movie on the weekend, and we'll stockpile a bunch of them. We have no idea what we're going to use them for, and we just refer to them, you know, on a project by project basis, often just like quickly overlaying them onto an image to see how they interact with the image. Yeah.
They're quite amazing. And this, so I understand this is sort of the base, and in there is one of them, or you're framing it in blue at the bottom. There is one which is going to be literally the base of the poster that we just saw for the bike, right?
Yeah.
So you have a bike.
Yeah, we chose that one because it looked sort of like a dancing bike. Just the sort of gestures in it. It looked like brake cables and hubcap. So.
And then you started to.
Well, we requested a bicycle from public. It wasn't required. They said you can do whatever you need to do to get the poster, but if you need a bike, let us know, which I did. And they were so generous. They sent it overnight. It arrived. We got very excited because we set it up. We had this collage in mind. So we knew we were going to section this thing in a way that was going to be unusual. So we set it up in the studio. And these are some of the kind of snapshots, if you will, or we were setting up to shoot different segments of the bike to see which portions or which segments related to the way the collage was sort of flowing. And these are some of those segments that we looked at carefully.
Yeah, we can see here, me as a graphic designer, I so admired the way you're working also with light as a photographer, Tom, and it's quite amazing, the sharpness, the unsharpness, the light. Like here, for example, there is a very, very professional change of life in the wheel that I really admire, and where how is the highlight, the focus, where is the focus? It's really beautifully done. And then finally, and you know, you're such a freedom, and now you work positive, negative, and then again this first sort of a rhythmical collage that becomes together your piece, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it's about designing everything kind of at the same time. You're trying to create an interesting photographic image, but you're designing that image. It's a design process and a light process. So somehow there's this combination, because we know where we're headed based on the inspiration, and to try to look at the object that's in the camera and be able to dissect it in a way that each image or each segment is a designed thing that could, in theory, be used on its own. It's almost like each segment could almost be its own poster, but the combination is what we're after. And so then you see it here with the different emphasis on different areas.
Yeah, and you have your studio at home, so I can imagine it stays for a while, and goes over a few days, and you're talking about things and trying, and
yeah, we're seeing things. It you know, we've moved from the larger studio. Of course, having the luxury of a very large studio was good, but the smaller studio functions well, and we can still do these things and make sense of them. And we no longer do a lot of commercial work. Like, I don't have products coming in every day where I need the studio, you know. So we're not sort of connected that way, the way we were for the last 40 years. And so we're trying to get the use of the studio to be something more for our own creative juices to flow, you know. But this was a commercial project, so it made sense, you know, to of course do it. Robert.
We are flexible. I know, you know, I know we've been also working together, and I know how you were working, and you know, you were showing the models, the stuff. I mean, things are so flexible now, also with the computer, the digital world. So this one here is also completely intriguing me. It's a poster for Chopin. It got like a prize in Poland. What was the story of this poster?
This was a Warsaw Poster Biennial invitational competition for Chopin's 200th birthday. And so I was thinking back, I think there's a picture I sent of a project I did when I was a graduate student at Yale with Paul Rand. And you know, he has this famous project where he gives you a Pantone paper color and an exact format and a word, and you have to make the color and the form look like the word. And this was the second week, so we had two colors, and the word was Mozart. And at the time, I didn't really appreciate this. I thought it was a little bit corny, having come from Cranbrook, where we were trying to really stir things up. But
you were in Yale. You were in Yale in a class for 2 weeks, and you had Paul Rand.
Yeah, we had Paul Rand for 6 weeks. But
6 weeks.
I think every week we got a different word and a different color. So the first week we got a green square, and it had to be the word pines. And the second week it was blue and green, and it was the word Mozart. So I was thinking about this when this assignment came up for Chopin, because he was so famous for piano compositions.
So you've been in Cranbrook, now you are in Yale, now you are with Paul Rand, and he's making you cutting piece of a little word with like 5-6 letters. When I do that to my student, they think I'm kidding, right? And then
I thought he was kidding.
And then and it's
I tell you, the only way I could do this project, I waited, the first week I waited till 10 o'clock the night before class, and we had a little bar next to our graphic design building called the Gypsy Bar, the graduate school professional something bar. So I went over there and had some crazy drink and came back and just started cutting up paper. And so
it's beautiful. And then see what happened. So this is now like 30 years after, right? Or so.
Yeah, it was. And it's, I mean, I think the students should be reminded that they don't always know what they're learning at the time. Like these things really sink in years and years later. You know, the thing about Paul Rand was just this immediacy and clarity versus what Tom and I are interested in, which is a lot of discovery and a lot of like just asking the viewer to really experience different things. So of course, Tom, you know, he's great about wanting to make everything a photograph. So he took my sketch and cut it neatly into this Bristol board panel and started photographing it. Just this one image, he must have done like 20 different versions just to see which direction the shadows should go, and then started bending them. And then I scanned them in and started putting the type over them.
Those are some of the versions of photographs there.
So there were a lot of these, and we were trying to get the 200 into the piano keys too. And so it was a pretty easy process. Everything looked pretty interesting, you know, like
so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it's a big size, right? Again.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, they're all that size. It's
oh, amazing. We have to exchange some posters, I tell you.
No problem.
No problem. If we've got them, you got them.
those are amazing. And yeah, so from here, I want to go to your website, because your website is as intricate as your posters. So if we go there are different entrance, different doors in I see home, project, contact, archive. And in the archive, if I go, for example, in 82, we have this sort of start of what I see as the 2D, 3D sort of expression. So this was for a digital and photography studio, I think.
Well, it's for our studio, and it's of course not digital at the time because everything's analog. So
design and photography. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, so we're doing, you know, we're starting our business essentially, and we needed a way to present ourselves, and we were in Boston, so we did, you know, this poster as well as some brochures and things to kind of get them around to clients. The idea, and this again is very simple. It is cut paper, very small model, set up in the studio, photographed, is a fixed image, and then all the sort of ghosted, like there's a ghosted triangle there. That was just a double exposure. Nothing could be done in computer because we didn't have them. So we were double exposing things, and the same thing would be true of the bottom where the extra sort of screen almost looked like W's running across there. Those were double exposed, so they were removed during the exposure and then taken over. So there was a way of ghosting into this image. And so those things these were very much experimental at the time because we were trying to get the camera to do these things that we didn't know how else to do because there was no precedent. There was no computer precedent that I knew of until I got a call after we'd done some magazine covers for ID Magazine at the time, just shortly after this. And I got a call from Caltech from a guy who thought I was an MIT professor and insisted that I was doing these things in a computer. And I said, no, they're just photographs. And he thought I was being very obtuse and difficult and wouldn't share my computer secrets. I had no idea what he was talking about. I thought he was insane. I said, you know, this idea of the computer, who can do this on a computer? It's a camera operation. Who knew, you know? And so it's kind of making digital images in the computer. They were experimenting with it. Obviously MIT was experimenting with it. I was not, so it was an accusation. It was
Well, that's the mysterious part of I think, and triggering part, at least for graphic designer. I remember, again, I was talking about the book where I first saw this one, this poster here. Now we are in 87. We don't know, it's at the edge of the computer coming out, the style coming out. And we have those kind of image that we have. They are so mysterious because we don't know how they've been done,
Right.
And this is so special. And then if I jump like I don't know, 10 years more, we are 2001, we are here now. Everyone is working with Photoshop, but still, there are parts, we know that it can not have been done in computers. So you like me went through the arrival of the computer. How do you feel about that? Do you think your style has evolved or changed?
Someone gave us a quote once, quite a while ago, but when we were starting to do more in the computer, and he said, "Don't you feel good?" I said, "Why would I feel good?" They said, "Because the technology finally caught up with what you're doing, and now you can do more." I thought, yes, that's exactly what it did. So we feel great about it. If somebody said the other day, "Don't you want to shoot more? Don't you want to go back and shoot film?" I said, "I have no interest in that, none." Digital is so fantastic, and the resolution and the qualities of the type and the qualities of the way to blend things in the computer and work is great. But we're coming from, as you can see with these posters, we're coming from sources that are analog. So we're coming out of a kind of analog approach with photographs, 3D type in many cases, those kinds of things, and then going back into the computer for assembly and some ways of getting facets and multiple points of view.
Yeah, and look, so you're even showing here, giving the possibility to the people, again, like what we did, to go through your pieces. Like, for example, here there are two buttons, and I can go through, and you're showing details. And here we are in the chapter project, and we see we can navigate through different places. So it's amazing way to present. So you always have been showing your process. Is it because you're also teaching, right?
I think so, but I think it's mostly, as you know, how much fun it is to do design. It's kind of fun to just share the process because we just enjoy it so much.
Yeah, it's kind of like anything that if you really are into it, you want to share with people. You have groups and clubs that share like interests, and that's kind of how we feel. It's sort of, we do these crazy things and let's share them. Why not?
Yeah.
Although I did have a lecture one night at a university, and I was the only one there. Nancy couldn't make it, and I did the talk, and I came back in. I was sitting back in one of the offices. We were supposed to go to dinner or something, and the professor who had asked us, but I was the only, came back in, and he said, "Well, all the students are out there. They're not smoking." And I said, "Well, that's good." Not really. And he said, "They think you're crazy." I said, "Okay, good." So I think if that's the reaction, that's fine, because they couldn't believe we'd go to such effort to make something when you can simply just do something simple in the computer and you don't have to worry about it. Well,
I know, and to have still some surprise of what we're doing while we're doing them. So this is like in the to go back at the end, the guitar book, you're showing the process there again inside of the book, and then on this book, which is type image message, which is definitely an interesting book, because you're going into the kitchen, the recipes of the designer. There you're showing again how people are making things. I I have the luck to have two posters in there.
Yes.
You're showing our tricks.
Yes.
And yeah, so we're arriving to the end of our discussion. You made two books. There is another one about which has 20 case studies presenting the work of 20 designers who have developed their own methodology. So you're showing that other people are doing that kind of how would I say, explorative research. And do you have any comment or anything to tell to students, young people, when they want to design something? Do you any idea, any hints? Could you give something to them, before we end this discussion?
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think we are teachers, so naturally, sending on information or sharing information with students is what we do. So the temptation to hold back is never there, I think, because we're always trying to get the students and ourselves sort of excited about the next opportunity and the next way to think about working. Like, what's another thing we could do? So I think that's part of it, though, is that I think there's a degree of honesty that needs to be put forward in getting where you want to get with your designs. I don't think duplicating trends, you duplicate trends to learn, but you don't duplicate trends thinking you're inventing it, because you're not. By the time you see a trend come forward, it's already over. So I wouldn't worry about developing a trend or a style. We're worried more about the process, learning a process, learning it well, and not worrying about, am I current? Do I need to appear like I'm hip and cool or part of a trend? That's not important. I think what's important is that the designer, you, the student, or us, really kind of get into what they're doing and use that level of inventiveness and discovery and do a lot of research. I think it takes almost kind of, I always say to students, it's three things you need. You need curiosity, you need focus, and that's real focus, not, I'm a multitasker, I can look in 12 places at once. It's focus. And you need a lot of grit. You need to be able to hold your focus, hold your attention, hold your curiosity, and keep it going and revolve it to the point where you go, it's like you've suddenly climbed the mountain and you have no idea how you got there, because you've been very devoted to the work you're doing. And I think that's really how we both feel about teaching and how we feel about our work.
Thank you. That's beautiful. This is Nancy, you want to say something?
Oh, I just think you have to be patient with yourself. I remember being really frustrated as a student, especially at Cranbrook, because I was one of a few undergrads and everyone else was so much more amazing. And I would often get really brutal critiques, and I could see that my work didn't look like what I wanted it to. I mean, like, what I had in my head was so much better. And it really took years before, you look at the stuff we're doing, you think it has a style and it's all established, but it just sort of happened, like Tom said, just because we were working toward something, and it sort of came out eventually, but it took a long time.
Long time. Yeah. Our motto, if we could write it in Latin under our front door, would be, it takes years, really. And I don't know the Latin translation.
No, that's a good end. I think it's very important that young people understand the role of the school and how things are growing and time. Let's finish with this word. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Generosity to be here today for this interview. Okay.
We're very happy.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye. Bye.